because that's all that matters, because all ways of reading are valid ways of reading. And I think it deals with a lot of the emotions that young mothers deal with when they have a child so young unexpectedly. I do love Geneva Rose. I need more books from her. Well, hello, I'm Erica. I am Maud, and it is that magical time of the beginning of the month where we talk about last month's reads. Now, I did read 6 books in the month of March. I think I read 6 books in February as well, so not bad. I have read 23 books this year out of my goal of 52, so I'm hoping that maybe even I've surpassed 52, and we just see how many we can fit in this year. I am so excited to talk about this wrap-up because it has one of the most anticipated reads that I've had for a year. We will get into it, but I was nervous with last month having so many 6-star books that I was like, okay, how am I going to top this? Like, I really hope like March has some good books. My biggest fear was like I was gonna have all these great reads in February and then March was gonna come and it was gonna like I was only gonna have 1 or 2. I actually have some pretty good ones for last month. I've also started my reads for this month, so I'm hoping to have more than 6, but we'll see. March was kind of a long month for me. I traveled, I got to see my best friends, I got my tattoos obviously. You guys came with me during all of those. And then I had sort of stress in my life that I'm not gonna get into. It's nobody's business. But dealing with all of that and on top of it, like Mercury retrograde, I actually bought this sticker. It kicked my ass last month, so it's Mercury and Gatorade again, and I love it. I think I'm really happy with like my Kindle stickers right now. Some of these I read on Kindle and physical book and of course audiobook. I've decided from now on I'm only gonna differentiate if I read on audiobook if I really like the narrator, because it's becoming tedious to try and remember if I listen to it mostly on audiobook or if I read it mostly on Kindle, because I switch back and forth with some books. So in the future, if I'm like, I read this book, just know it was one of the formats, because that's all that matters, because all ways of reading are valid ways of reading. So let's start out with the first book that I got done in March, which was Mary Kubica's It's Not Her. I love Mary Kubica. She's one of my favorite thriller authors. There's just something about her. I really enjoy her work. She's from the Chicago area, as am I, so whenever I read her books, I don't know, it's just like this vibe that you get, that it's like, you know, when somebody who's from the same area as you're from writes a book, like you just feel the vibe and like how they speak and how they articulate and how they like explain things. Also, a lot of her books are based around people who are like from the Chicago area. I don't think all of them are, but like I think most of them are. It always feels like going back to an old friend reading her books, even though they're kind of messed up thrillers. It's a very like comforting thriller author for me. So It's Not Her. We're basically centered around a woman named Courtney who goes on vacation with her brother, her husband, her sister-in-law, and their kids, and all of their kids collectively to a summer vacation where she wakes up one morning to find that her brother-in-law and her sister have been taken out. She gets a hold of their kids and like gets them all to safety, and then the rest of the book is sort of centered around dissecting what happened that night and what happened in the following weeks leading up to that night. And what I like about Mary's books is that once you think you've got it figured out and you're like, oh, clearly it's like the creepy like townsperson, or it's the violent other character that's displaying some violent weird things but also like isn't. Don't want to spoil this because there are so many twists and turns. She's kind of similar to Frida McFadden for me, of like the amount of twists, like plot twists that she puts in her books usually. So if you enjoy Frida McFadden, I think you'll enjoy Mary Kubica as well. This is a really good summer thriller. I know that we're in spring and like half of us are still getting snow. It keeps calling for snow on and off next week. Honestly, it's getting exhausting. But this is definitely like, I feel like a perfect summer thriller. I gave it 5 stars because I truly didn't know like where all of this was going. And it was such a good thriller in that way. And I think that if you're like somebody who wants something kind of spooky, if you are going to a cabin by a lake for the summer and you want to like feel immersed, this would be a really good book. Also, if you just want like a good summer slasher. Okay, next up we have And Now Back to You. This released in February, obviously. You guys saw me when I went to meet BK Borson and Bryn Weaver when I got my copy. This is like one of my most prized possessions. where I got my signed copy from her. And then I actually finished this book on the way because I already had the audiobook pre-ordered. And so I actually finished reading this on my girls' trip. The moment I got it, I did not put it down. I absolutely love it. And if you haven't listened to the audiobook, I highly recommend because I really enjoyed the narrators for this book as well. And it had like cute little news reporting sounds when it would go from each chapter, or if it was like there's a TV here and it has Leon, I believe you have an update for us. So it would make little like news anchor sounds right before it would read those. And it was really immersive and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed Jackson and Delilah. It felt very 90s even though it's set in modern day. It felt very 90s with like Delilah. Like if you were a 90s or early 2000s kid like I was, it was Delilah like, you know what I'm talking about. And it was definitely like Grumpy Sunshine. I loved how much depth, again, that these characters had. The Heartstrings trilogy, because there's one more book coming out, is probably one of my favorite by B.K. Borson. I love a lot of her books, but this one especially, I mean, this series is what got me into her. And so I was super excited when this book came out. This is just about Jackson and Delilah, who are two weather reporters, sort of rival weather reporters, who are sent on a 2-week-long television reporting assignment about the latest snowstorm that is hitting the area. And it's sort of like the complexities of them getting to know each other and very much being an opposites attract situation. Him loving all of her quirks, her realizing that some of his quirks are from a much deeper seated situation, because like in the first book, Jackson was sort of this like really funny like comic relief guy for everybody around him, but once you dive into this book you realize that he has a lot more depth to him and why he is a certain way or why he wants to make people happy all the time. And I really enjoyed getting to read about these characters, so I'm super excited for the third book. 5 stars. Okay, so next up I read Margot's Got Money Troubles. I read this, I was sort of like this is when I had been home, I had gotten my tattoos, I had seen my girls, I had had a great start to the month, and then things in life sort of spiraled a little bit, nothing too crazy, but just feeling insane because of it. And Margot's Got Money Troubles really like took me out of my own head and brought me into this space of somebody. This is why I love books. You just travel to a space or a time or a person that you'll never be, but you're fascinated to observe. And it was just like, it was nice to go into a book that was the complete opposite of my life. I really enjoy books that can get you sort of like out of your mind space like that and put you just in someone else's shoes completely. And this one I will recommend to you in audiobook form because Elle Fanning does narrate it as she is playing Margot. As she's playing Margot in the Apple TV television show of it, because it is getting its own show, and Elle Fanning is playing Margot. Nick Offerman is playing Jinx, and then Michelle Pfeiffer is actually playing, I forget her name, but it's Margot's mother. And I can't think of like a better cast for this book, honestly. It was absolutely fantastically cast. I can't imagine somebody else playing Jinx. But essentially, Margot's Got Money Troubles is about a college student, 20-year-old college student named Margot, who has a 6-week affair with her professor and ends up pregnant. Now, because the professor has decided not to step up and she is not suing him for child support, which I think she should, but nevertheless, she now has to come up with a way to make money. And at the same time, her father Jinx happens to quit pro wrestling because his body is just kind of physically quitting when it comes to that, and her mother is marrying a pastor. We have all of these sort of side plots going on, and Margot figures out that she can go on a certain site and make money pretty easily. So she starts posing as this sort of green alien alter ego named Ghost, and this is just sort of a book about, it's almost like a coming of age, but it's a coming of age through motherhood very quickly, a very unexpected pregnancy and sort of growing up, and her really saying to herself like, yes, I love my son so much, but this did in fact ruin my life, but I'm figuring it out and now he's the best part of my life. And I think it deals with a lot of the emotions that young mothers deal with when they have a child so young unexpectedly. It's a very honest book in that way, and I will say I think it applies only if the young mother does allow themselves to be very honest with themselves and the decisions that they made, which I think is kind of rare because nobody wants to be wrong about the decisions that they've made, especially one so permanent as to have a baby, especially one out of an affair. Margot is just very honest about how she feels about motherhood, about how she feels about having a baby, how hard the recovery is to do it on her own, how she hates that it was an affair. It deals with all of these sort of new aspects that come with being a mother, but also somebody who's young and struggling for money. And it deals with other separate issues such as like addiction or religious psychosis and religious abuse. It's a very kind of whirlwind book, but it does grasp you and pull you in immensely, and it was absolutely fantastic. I gave it a 4-star only because Margot and her mother. Margot made some decisions in regards to her mother that I don't think I could get past, so maybe Margot's a better person than me for that, but I don't like the decision that she made in regards to all of that. I would have flipped a chair. I won't spoil it, but I do highly recommend you listen to it. The next one I read was The Surrogate by Frida McFadden. I actually started this during the girls trip as well. The surrogate is about a woman named Abby who has wanted a child for a very long time. Her and her husband are having issues to conceive after a few adoptions backed out, and she was absolutely heartbroken. Her secretary decides to offer her the opportunity to use her as a surrogate. And as the book unfolds, the surrogate starts to act sort of more and more territorial around the pregnancy and around the husband and around Abby's life as a whole. And that's all I'll say about it, so I don't spoil anything. I don't want to ruin the twist. I will say, however, this was probably my least favorite Frida McFadden book, just because it was a 3-star for me. It was predictable. It was still fun. I was still interested, but I wasn't reading it going, okay, I wonder what the twist is going to be. I was reading it going, okay, I wonder when the main character is going to figure out the twist, because I already know what it is. It's not a bad story. It is, however, like a story I think that's been told a lot in like books and shows and media. You've seen it before. If you've read it, you know exactly what I'm referencing. Did I absolutely hate it? No. Did I love it? No. This was my like least favorite Frida book, which is saying a lot because I've read quite a few of her. But even then, for being my least favorite overall, not bad at all. But I wouldn't cozy up thinking it's going to be like a truly mind-blowing Frida book. The next one I read is Below Zero by Ellie Hazelwood. It's the last of the STEMinist novellas. I read the first 2 last month, and so I decided to finish up the last one this month when it became available. Again, 3 stars. I have to be in the mood for Ellie Hazelwood, and I kind of was this time, but a lot of her books are very repetitive. A lot of them are very predictable, but they are sort of like this warm hug and like reliable, cozy book. So it's one of those when you need a comfort read, I feel like Ellie Hazelwood is the person that you go to when you want to like shut your brain off. You know exactly how this is going to end because it's so similar to all of her other books, and it just feels like a warm hug at the end. That's what I recommend Ellie Hazelwood for. So this is about the characters Ian and Hannah, who are sort of rivals. This is a big miscommunication trope. Essentially, Hannah is wanting to work for NASA, and in order to test a piece of equipment, she has to go, pretty sure it's the Arctic, in order to do this research, and gets stuck in a snowstorm. Again, a big snowstorm theme with these books. I think it's because we had our last snowstorm last month. They had a big snowstorm, and there's a huge avalanche, and essentially this book is about Ian and Hannah while dealing with this avalanche, flashing back to the past and figuring out where they're going with their future, and sort of solving this whole big miscommunication trope. So I will say this, number 1, is a miscommunication trope before anything else. So if you don't enjoy it, I would skip it. I like miscommunication in a healthy way, like to sort of like give a book drama. However, I've found that I don't like a miscommunication trope. I like miscommunications to be the sidekick to other tropes that I like. This was more of a miscommunication that had enemies to lovers as a sidekick as opposed to the other way around. So maybe that's why I didn't enjoy it as much, but 3 stars. I gave the entire trilogy of the STEMinist novellas 3 stars. Moving on to the last book, which was a Geneva Rose book. My girl. I do love Geneva Rose. I need more books from her. And the book I read was You Shouldn't Have Come Here. And this is a thriller based around the main character, Grace, who is living in the big city. She does a getaway to kind of just escape the hustle and bustle of the city. She throws a dart at the wall. That decides where she goes. And this time she ended up in a little podunk town in Wyoming, staying in an Airbnb with a very handsome host named Calvin Wells. And this book sort of, okay, here's what I'll say. I did give this book 4 stars. It was my favorite Geneva Rose. However, I did really enjoy it. Essentially, we are following the day-to-day of Calvin, who owns the ranch Airbnb in Wyoming, and Grace, how they're sort of in this immediate sort of courtship. He is definitely courting her. She sees it more of a fling. And we meet a bunch of his hometown friends and a couple of the women of the town that are close with Calvin that don't particularly like Grace for some reason. And this deals with a lot of like nature euphemisms and of like there's mountain lions and there's bears, and it's sort of Grace kind of realizes, oh, I'm kind of like defenseless out here and I don't know how to like combat these animals. And she's a city girl, so she's not really down in the dirt. And she's there for a solid 2 weeks, and as her and Calvin grow closer, things end up becoming a lot stranger around her. She starts to notice some really strange and obsessive behaviors from him, some strange behaviors from a lot of his friends, and the mystery behind what happened to his parents, his estranged brother, all of the good stuff. I don't want to say any more because I don't want to give away the entire plot because it has has a really, really good twist. However, I will say the first like 30 to 50% of this book, I realized, okay, I don't want to read cowboy romances. They're not for me. Because this does sort of deal with at first like a cowboy courtship of the city girl. I have tried to pick up cowboy romances before and it's not my thing. But this kind of really confirmed it. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't like ranch romances. The twist with this one, I absolutely did not see coming. I only give it 4 stars because again, the first 50% of the book, I was like, okay, what are we doing? This is a lot of farm work. Somebody deck somebody, do something. So that was why I gave it 4 stars. However, I do highly recommend it. It's a really fun thriller. I might be partial because Geneva's work is always really fun to me and I always really enjoy like her twists and turns, even if it's not the most crazy twist in the world, although this one was. Even though sometimes it's not the most crazy twist in the world, I still really do enjoy it. And again, a really good summer slasher. If you're looking for like a good book for when you're camping this summer or for like a road trip or something like that, I highly recommend this one. It was a really good time. But that is the last book I read in the month of March. Let me know what you read in March. What was your favorite? What was your least favorite? Please be sure to like and subscribe and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.